Ryan Leaf. This wasn't just a bust, it was a meltdown in real time. The 1998 NFL Draft came down to two quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, the polished son of a legend, and Ryan Leaf, the bigger, stronger gunslinger from Washington State. The Colts took Manning. The Chargers, desperate for their franchise quarterback, took Leaf and paid a steep price to move up and get him. At 6 feet 5 inches, 240 pounds, Leaf had the build of a prototype passer. He threw 33 touchdowns his final college season and looked the part of a generational arm talent. But everything else? It was a ticking time bomb. Leaf showed up cocky, uninterested in leadership, and allergic to accountability. He famously clashed with the San Diego media, especially one viral moment where he screamed at a reporter in the locker room. Teammates didn't trust him, and despite being handed the keys to a rebuilding franchise, he crashed the car almost immediately. His rookie season, 2 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, and a 39.0 passer rating. By year 3, he was gone, not just from San Diego, but out of the NFL altogether. But the story didn't end there. Years later, Leaf's life spiraled into addiction and arrests, including a prison sentence for burglary related to prescription drug theft. He eventually got clean and rebuilt his life, becoming a motivational speaker and analyst. Tony Manderich. Tony Manderich wasn't just hyped, he was manufactured into a myth. Dubbed the Incredible Bulk on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Manderich was a 6'6", 315-pound offensive tackle out of Michigan State with 4.6 speed and biceps the size of tree trunks. People weren't just calling him a sure thing, they were calling him the greatest offensive line prospect ever. The Packers drafted him 2nd overall in 1989, ahead of Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas, and Deion Sanders. Let that sink in. But from the second he arrived in Green Bay, nothing clicked. Manderich held out for a massive rookie contract, came into camp unprepared, and quickly looked overwhelmed by NFL speed. His technique was sloppy, his attitude was worse, and behind the scenes, he was battling demons the world didn't yet know about. He was addicted to painkillers. He later admitted to rampant steroid use throughout college, and without the chemical edge, the Incredible Bulk looked more like a bust in pads. He lasted just 3 seasons in Green Bay. Manderich did attempt a comeback years later with the Colts, and actually played decently. But by then, the damage was done. His name became shorthand for draft day disaster. Jamarcus Russell. This one still hurts for Raiders fans. Jamarcus Russell had it all. A cannon arm, prototypical size, the swagger of a #1 pick. After lighting up the 2007 Sugar Bowl with LSU, the Raiders were convinced they had their franchise quarterback. They took him 1st overall and handed him a $61 million contract. What they got in return? A masterclass in unfulfilled potential. Russell showed up to camp overweight, reportedly tipping the scales near 300 pounds at one point. His work ethic? Almost non-existent. Coaches would give him blank game tapes labeled Playbook just to test if he watched them. He'd come back saying he loved the film. That's how bad it got. On the field, it was even worse. He couldn't read defenses, he held the ball too long, and his mechanics collapsed under pressure. In 3 seasons, he threw 18 touchdowns and 23 picks. Fans turned, coaches lost hope, and by 2010, he was out of the league. Every time a new QB flames out, people ask, but was he Jamarcus bad? That's the legacy. By the way, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed and dropped a like for the algorithm. Jeff George. Jeff George was a quarterback with a golden arm and a silver tongue, and that tongue got him in more trouble than any corner blitz ever did. Coming out of Illinois, he was hailed as the next big thing. The Colts took him with the #1 pick in 1990, hoping he'd be the new face of their franchise. But instead of leadership, they got chaos. George had all the tools, but none of the traits. He clashed with coaches, alienated teammates, and got into sideline shouting matches that went viral before viral was even a thing. He didn't win games. He blamed others for losing them, and that attitude followed him wherever he went. He bounced from Indy to Atlanta to Oakland to Minnesota to Washington, always showing flashes, but never leading. And despite throwing for over 27,000 yards in his career, he'll always be remembered more for the drama than the dimes. Lawrence Phillips. Few players entered the NFL with as much baggage as Lawrence Phillips, and few left behind a darker legacy. Coming out of Nebraska, Phillips was a dominant, violent runner with terrifying power and rare explosiveness. On the field, he looks like a future Hall of Famer, but off the field, the red flags were impossible to ignore. He had already been arrested for assaulting his girlfriend before entering the draft, yet the Rams still took him 6th overall in 1996, believing they could fix him. They couldn't. Phillips never became the star they hoped for. He fumbled often, clashed with coaches, and struggled to adjust to the NFL. But it was his off-the-field issues that ultimately ended his career. Multiple arrests, violent incidents, a reputation that followed him everywhere he went, from the Rams to the Dolphins to the 49ers to the CFL. After football, things only got worse. In 2009, he was sentenced to 31 years in prison for multiple violent crimes. And in 2016, Lawrence Phillips was found dead in his prison cell, an apparent suicide. He was 40 years old. Robert Griffin III. In 2012, he wasn't just a star, he was a phenomenon. Robert Griffin burst into the NFL like a lightning bolt. The Heisman winner was taken 2nd overall by Washington and immediately became the face of the franchise. He had blazing speed and a rocket arm. His rookie season? Unbelievable. He threw for 20 touchdowns, rushed for 7 more, and took Washington to the playoffs. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year and looked like the future of football, but it all fell apart fast. In the playoffs, head coach Mike Shanahan controversially left Griffin in the game with an injured knee. It got worse. He tore his ACL and LCL and was never the same again. He rushed back too quickly, struggled in year 2, and then got caught in the middle of coaching chaos, offensive line problems, and constant media pressure. The magic was gone. By 2015, he was benched in favor of Kirk Cousins. By 2016, he was cut. He bounced to Cleveland, then to Baltimore as a backup. But the player who once took over the league was never able to get it back. Injuries, poor management, and bad timing turned one of the most electric quarterbacks we'd ever seen into a what-if. Andre Bruce, the only linebacker ever taken with the #1 overall pick. In 1988, the Atlanta Falcons saw Andre Bruce, a 6'5", 270-pound athletic freak from Auburn, and thought they were drafting the next Lawrence Taylor. He looked the part, long frame, explosive first step, dominated college. But in the NFL, he never came close. Across 4 seasons with Atlanta, Bruce started just 42 games and recorded a total of 16 sacks, less than 4 per year. For a top pick meant to anchor a defense, it wasn't just underwhelming, it was invisible. He later played 6 more seasons with the Raiders, but mostly as a backup or rotational player. He never made a Pro Bowl, never changed a game, and he certainly never lived up to being the #1 pick. Robert Gallery. Coming out of Iowa in 2004, Robert Gallery was hyped as one of the safest picks in the draft. A 6 feet 7 inches, 325-pound offensive tackle with elite athleticism. Scouts called him a can't-miss prospect. The Raiders made him the #2 overall pick, expecting to plug him in as a dominant blindside protector for the next decade. But almost immediately, things went sideways. Gallery struggled badly at left tackle, getting beat by speed rushers, bull rushers, pretty much everyone. He was constantly flagged for holding and false starts, and after 2 disappointing seasons, the Raiders gave up on the idea of him playing left tackle altogether. They moved him inside to guard, where he was serviceable. But you don't take a guard with the 2nd pick in the draft. And worse, this was a draft loaded with Hall of Famers, Larry Fitzgerald, Phillip Rivers, Sean Taylor, Vince Wilfork. The Raiders could have taken any of them. Art Schlichter. When the Colts took Art Schlichter with the 4th overall pick in 1982, they believed they were getting a game-changing quarterback. He had been a star at Ohio State, a dual-threat quarterback with a big arm, quick feet, and the charisma to lead a franchise. But what they didn't realize was that Schlichter had a hidden addiction, not to alcohol or drugs, but to gambling, and it destroyed everything. Before he even threw a touchdown in the NFL, he was already tens of thousands of dollars in debt. He was placing bets on college basketball, NFL games, and horse races. He even bet on games he played in. The addiction spiraled out of control. Schlichter got suspended by the league. He tried to mount comebacks, but every time, the gambling dragged him back under. Eventually, he was forced out of football entirely, and his legal issues just kept piling up. Fraud, forgery, scams. By the time his story fully unfolded, Schlichter had served multiple stints in prison. He played in just 13 NFL games, with 3 interceptions and 0 touchdowns. Art Schlichter had the talent to be a star, but he couldn't escape the demons he brought with him into the league. Josh Rosen. He was nicknamed the Chosen Rosen, a UCLA star with a textbook throwing motion, NFL-ready footwork, and a chip on his shoulder the size of California. He was confident, too confident, some said. When the Cardinals drafted him 10th overall in 2018, Rosen famously declared, "There were 9 mistakes made ahead of me." But just 1 year later, he was gone. Rosen struggled from the start. The Cardinals had no offensive line, no stability, and fired their head coach after 1 season. Rosen was thrown to the Wolves, and the Wolves devoured him. He threw 14 interceptions and just 11 touchdowns. And after Arizona got the #1 pick in 2019, they took Kyler Murray and sent Rosen to Miami. That's when the freefall began. Rosen bounced from team to team: Dolphins, Buccaneers, 49ers, Falcons, Browns, Vikings. He never started another full season. In just a few years, he went from top 10 pick to forgotten backup to out of the league entirely. No injuries, no scandals, just a guy who was supposed to be a franchise savior and never came close. Jeff Okudah. He was supposed to be the next lockdown corner. Coming out of Ohio State in 2020, Okudah was considered the cleanest cornerback prospect in years. Tall, fast, physical, and polished. A can't-miss pick. The Lions took him 3rd overall, their highest defensive back selection since 1956. But the NFL humbled him quickly. In his rookie season, he gave up multiple big plays, struggled with speed receivers, and battled injuries. He tore his Achilles in week 1 of his second year, and by the time he returned, he had lost a step. Detroit, meanwhile, was changing regimes, and the new coaching staff had little patience. In 2023, he was traded to the Falcons for a 5th-round pick, a shocking fall for a former top 3 selection. He struggled in Atlanta too. More injuries, more missed tackles, and less impact. By 2024, he was barely seeing the field. It wasn't just that he didn't live up to the hype, it's that he never even got close. Injuries, instability, and maybe, just maybe, a player who looked better in college than he ever would in the pros. Sam Darnold. He was supposed to save the Jets. When New York drafted him 3rd overall in 2018, fans were ecstatic. Finally, a franchise quarterback with poise, size, and arm talent. Darnold had lit up USC with his fearless throws and improvisation. The Jets believed they had their guy, but they failed him from the start. Bad offensive lines, no weapons, rotating coaches. Darnold showed flashes, like his dazzling 2019 game against the Cowboys. But those moments were rare. More often, he looked lost. By 2020, he was seeing ghosts on national TV against the Patriots. That clip became a meme. He was traded to the Panthers in 2021, hoping a fresh start would revive his career. It didn't. He still struggled with turnovers and poor decisions. The confidence he once had, gone. Injuries piled up. So did the losses. And by 2022, he was just another backup bouncing around the league. Joey Harrington. When the Detroit Lions drafted Joey Harrington with the 3rd overall pick in 2002, they believed they were finally getting their franchise quarterback. He had it all on paper: a decorated college career at Oregon, Heisman buzz, and the nickname Joey Heisman. He was smart, polished, and came off like the perfect leader. Detroit thought he could be the face of the franchise for the next decade, but they forgot one thing: they were the Lions. Harrington was thrown into a disaster. The offensive line was weak, the run game was non-existent, the receivers couldn't separate, and instead of being nurtured, he was fed to the wolves, starting 12 games as a rookie and getting hit from every direction. Still, fans were patient, but as the years went on, his play never improved. He was erratic under pressure. He forced throws, and despite all the chances, he never looked like a franchise guy. In 4 years with Detroit, he won just 18 games and threw 85 interceptions to only 79 touchdowns. After that, he bounced around. A backup in Miami, a stopgap in Atlanta, a forgotten name in New Orleans. It wasn't all his fault. The Lions gave him no support, but in the end, Joey Harrington never lived up to the hype. Rick Myer. He was supposed to be the next Joe Montana. Coming out of Notre Dame in 1993, Rick Myer had the hype, the size, the pedigree. He'd started 4 years for the Fighting Irish, drew comparisons to Hall of Famers, and was taken 2nd overall by the Seattle Seahawks, the highest QB pick in franchise history at the time. And his rookie year? It wasn't bad. He set several records for first-year quarterbacks and even finished 2nd in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting. But after that, everything unraveled. His accuracy issues became a major problem. His decision-making never improved. And instead of progressing, Myer regressed. By the end of year 4 in Seattle, he had more interceptions than touchdowns and had led the team to a miserable 20-31 record. The Seahawks gave up on him and traded him to the Bears for a first-round pick, one of the worst trades in Chicago history. In Chicago, he never started a game. He bounced around to 5 more teams, never sticking, never delivering. Myer finished his career with 50 touchdowns and 76 interceptions. He was out of the league by 2004. Kajana Carter. He was supposed to be the next great running back. The Bengals took him with the #1 overall pick in the 1995 draft, the first running back to go first overall since Bo Jackson. Carter was a dominant force at Penn State, racking up over 1,500 rushing yards and 23 touchdowns his junior year. He had elite speed, incredible burst, and was seen as the franchise savior in Cincinnati. But before he ever played a regular season snap, it was already over. In his very first preseason game, Carter tore his ACL on just his 3rd carry. Back then, ACL tears were career-altering, and Carter was never the same again. He came back the next year, but he had lost a step. The explosiveness was gone. Injuries kept piling up. A dislocated kneecap, wrist problems, a broken arm. Over the next 7 seasons, he never once started more than 5 games in a season. He bounced from Cincinnati to Washington, then to New Orleans, but he never reclaimed the dominance he showed in college. Carter finished his career with just 1,144 rushing yards and 20 total touchdowns, far from what you'd expect from a #1 pick. His story is one of the ultimate what-ifs in NFL history, a can't-miss prospect who never had a real chance to show what he could have been. Akili Smith. He had one incredible college season, and it made the Bengals believe he was the future. After throwing 32 touchdowns at Oregon in 1998, Akili Smith skyrocketed up draft boards. The Bengals picked him 3rd overall in 1999, hoping he'd finally solve their never-ending quarterback problem. But he wasn't ready. Smith only had 1 full year as a college starter, and it showed. He struggled to read defenses, hesitated in the pocket, and never looked comfortable running an NFL offense. His rookie season? Just 2 touchdowns in 7 starts. By year 2, he was already getting benched. Cincinnati tried to develop him, but the mechanics, the decision-making, the leadership, none of it ever came together. He started just 17 games in 4 years, throwing 5 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. By 2003, he was out of the league. Akili Smith had the arm talent and athleticism, but not the experience or polish. The Bengals ignored the red flags and paid the price. It's a harsh reminder that one great college year doesn't always mean NFL success. Charles Rogers. He was supposed to be the next big thing, a hometown hero with elite speed and hands. The Detroit Lions drafted Charles Rogers 2nd overall in 2003, dreaming he'd be the superstar wideout they desperately needed. At Michigan State, he was electric, breaking records, torching defenses, but the NFL never got to see that version of him. In just his 5th game as a rookie, Rogers broke his collarbone during a routine practice drill. The very next year, he broke the same collarbone on his first reception of the season. That kind of back-to-back injury luck? Devastating. And that was just the start. Rogers struggled off the field with substance abuse issues and was suspended multiple times for violating the league's drug policy. His relationship with the team deteriorated fast, and by 2006, he was out of the league entirely, with just 36 career receptions. It was a tragic fall. Charles Rogers had every tool to be elite, but injuries, addiction, and off-the-field issues stole his career before it ever had a chance to take off. He passed away in 2019 at just 38 years old. Zach Wilson. At BYU, he looked like a magician. Lightning-fast release, off-platform throws, swagger for days. The Jets saw a franchise savior. They took Wilson 2nd overall in 2021, a bold pick in a stacked quarterback class. He was supposed to bring New York football back to life, but the reality? It unraveled fast. Wilson struggled mightily as a rookie. Poor accuracy, bad reads, and a total lack of command. In year 2, instead of taking a leap, things got worse. He lost the locker room, the media turned on him, and after one brutal performance against the Patriots, he gave a now infamous answer when asked if he'd let the defense down. He said, "No, That one word might have ended his time in New York. He was benched, booed, and by 2023, demoted behind backups. The Jets brought in Aaron Rodgers, signaling they'd already moved on. By 2024, Wilson was traded away, not as a starter, not even as a future project, just a reminder of what didn't work. He's still in the league, but not as the face of anything. Zach Wilson's fall was rapid, from golden-armed prospect to backup purgatory. Trey Lance. He was the ultimate mystery box. A 6'4" quarterback with a cannon arm, elite athleticism, and only one full season of college football at North Dakota State. But what a season it was. 28 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a national championship. The 49ers were sold. They traded 3 first-round picks to move up and draft him 3rd overall in 2021. The plan? Sit him behind Jimmy Garoppolo, develop him slowly, and unleash the future of the franchise. But the future never came. Injuries slowed everything. A broken finger in preseason, a sprained knee, and then a fractured ankle in 2022 that wiped out his entire season. When he finally got chances, he looked raw. Inconsistent footwork, slow reads, struggled with accuracy. Meanwhile, a 7th-round pick named Brock Purdy started lighting it up. And just like that, Lance went from face of the franchise to 3rd string. By 2023, San Francisco traded him to Dallas for a 4th-round pick. A stunning fall for someone they once gave up the world to get. Trey Lance might still find his moment. But so far, he's one of the biggest what-ifs in modern draft history. Justin Blackman. He was built to dominate. At Oklahoma State, Blackman was unstoppable. Back-to-back Biletnikoff Awards as the nation's top receiver. Over 1,500 yards in 2 straight seasons. And 38 touchdowns in 3 years. He was physical, fast, reliable, and explosive. A top 5 pick in 2012 felt like a lock. The Jaguars made it official, taking him 5th overall. And early on, he flashed everything they hoped for, including a 236-yard game as a rookie. Still one of the best days by a rookie wideout ever. But Blackman's career was derailed off the field. First came a DUI before he even signed his rookie deal. Then, multiple violations of the NFL's substance abuse policy. He was suspended indefinitely in 2014 and never played another down in the league. It wasn't a lack of talent. His tape showed elite ability, but addiction, poor decision-making, and a lack of structure ended a career that should have been great. He played just 20 NFL games. And for Jaguars fans, Justin Blackman isn't remembered for what he did, but for everything he could have been. Steve Emptman. He was supposed to be a franchise cornerstone. At the University of Washington, Emptman was a force of nature. In 1991, he won the Lombardi Award, finished 4th in Heisman, voting as a defensive lineman, and led the Huskies to a national championship. He was fast, powerful, and fundamentally dominant. The clear-cut number 1 overall pick in the 1992 NFL Draft. The Colts took him to anchor their defense for the next decade. But Emptman's body had other plans. In just his rookie year, he tore his ACL. In year 2, he ruptured a disc in his neck. In year 3, another knee injury. Each comeback was met with another devastating setback. He ended up starting just 18 games for the Colts over 3 seasons, before bouncing around to Miami and Washington in limited roles. Despite flashes of the player he once was, his body simply couldn't hold up. Emptman retired by 27. Derek Harvey. The Jaguars thought they were getting a game wrecker. Instead, they got one of the biggest letdowns in franchise history. Coming out of Florida, Derek Harvey was fresh off a national championship and a dominant performance in the BCS title game. He looked the part. Long arms, quick burst, SEC pedigree, everything a top defensive end should be. Jacksonville believed he'd anchor their pass rush for years, trading up to take him 8th overall in 2008. But it unraveled fast. First came the contract holdout. Harvey missed all of training camp and the preseason. Then came the slow start. He recorded just 8.5 sacks in 3 full seasons. For comparison, several players taken after him hit that number in their rookie year alone. He lacked instincts, got manhandled in run defense, and never adjusted to NFL speed. By 2011, he was cut. By 2012, he was gone. He played just 4 total seasons in the league. Jason Smith. He was supposed to protect the future. Instead, he became the face of a failed rebuild. The Rams drafted Jason Smith second overall in 2009, a massive offensive tackle out of Baylor who'd only recently switched from tight end. But scouts were enamored with his size, athleticism, and supposed ceiling. They saw a cornerstone left tackle who could anchor the line for the next decade. But Smith never adjusted. He struggled with the fundamentals, footwork, hand placement, leverage, and worst of all, he couldn't stay on the field. Concussions derailed his rookie season. Poor performance derailed the rest. By year 2, he'd already lost the starting job. By year 4, he was traded to the Jets for another draft bust, Wayne Hunter. And within a season, Smith was out of the NFL entirely. He played just 29 total games. Courtney Brown. He was the #1 overall pick in the 2000 NFL draft. A physical freak, 6 feet 4 inches, 270 pounds. Ran a 4.540, bench pressed 225 pounds 33 times. Dominated at Penn State with 33 sacks in college, a school record, and the Cleveland Browns were desperate. They had just returned to the NFL as an expansion team and needed a cornerstone. Courtney Brown was supposed to be it, and at first, he showed flashes. 4.5 sacks as a rookie, then 4.5 in his first 5 games of year 2. But then, the injuries started. Knee injuries, foot problems, torn biceps, a dislocated elbow. It felt like every time he turned the corner, something else broke. And by 2006, he was out of the league entirely. For a guy once compared to Reggie White and Bruce Smith, Courtney Brown never came close to living up to the hype. Vernon Goldston. The Jets took him 6th overall in 2008. He looked like a superhero, 6 feet 3 inches, 265 pounds, insane strength, elite speed. He terrorized quarterbacks at Ohio State and destroyed the NFL Combine. New York thought they had found their next pass-rushing star. But there was one problem. He couldn't play football. Goldston never recorded a single sack in 3 full seasons. He didn't force a fumble. He barely even got on the field. Rex Ryan eventually called him one of the biggest disappointments of his career. Coaches said he looked the part, but didn't have the motor. Didn't seem to even like the game. After the Jets cut him, he got tryouts with the Bears and Rams, but never made another active roster. He finished his career with 0 sacks and 0 starts. For a top 10 pick who was built like a Marvel character, Vernon Goldston might be the most physically gifted bust in NFL history. Blair Thomas. The Jets had the 2nd overall pick in 1990, and they used it on Penn State running back Blair Thomas, a Heisman finalist who ran for over 3,000 yards in college despite tearing his ACL. They thought he'd be the face of the franchise. Instead, he never even scored more than 3 touchdowns in a season. In 4 years with the Jets, Thomas rushed for just over 2,000 yards total. He never cracked 800 yards in a season, and despite being drafted to carry the offense, he was eventually benched for journeyman backs. Injuries didn't help, but coaches said he just didn't have that it factor in the pros. He was solid, but never special. The Jets gave up and let him walk. Thomas bounced around to the Patriots, Cowboys, Falcons, and Panthers, but never found a home. He ended his career with just 6 touchdowns total, which is the fewest by any running back ever taken in the top 2. And to make it worse, the Jets passed on Emmitt Smith to get him. Troy Williamson. When Randy Moss left the Vikings in 2005, they needed a replacement fast. So with the 7th overall pick, they drafted Troy Williamson, a blazing fast wide receiver from South Carolina. He ran a 4.3240. He had hops, quickness, and raw speed that made scouts drool. But there was one problem. He couldn't catch. Williamson had the worst hands of any starting wide receiver in the league. Passes hit him in the chest and bounced off. He dropped open bombs that would have changed games. And it wasn't just a few bad plays, it was constant. In his rookie year, he caught just 24 passes. The next season, he dropped more passes than anyone in the NFL. And in 3 years with the Vikings, he scored just 3 total touchdowns. Coaches tried everything. New gloves, new techniques, even vision therapy. But nothing fixed it. And after just 3 seasons, Minnesota traded him to Jacksonville for a 6th-round pick. He played 1 more forgettable season, then vanished from the league. Williamson was supposed to replace a Hall of Famer. Instead, he became a punchline for what happens when you draft speed without skills. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed. Thanks for watching.